Good morning. Today is Wednesday, the 12th of August. And this is take two because in the first one I said it's the 12th of March. That's a memorable date for me, but I'll come back to that another time. Anyway, I pass this spot every morning on my way to work. And I thought I'd just stop here. For one, it is an absolutely beautiful morning. And for two, I thought I'd just stand here and take in the scenery because it's bloody beautiful and the weather's so good. It's going to be like 33 degrees today. Unfortunately for me, I have to go to work. So it's going to be a hot, sweaty day and probably a dirty one at that. But I've got a job to do. Well, I haven't got a job. We're a bit slack today. So I'm going to do a timing belt replacement on this Fiesta. And I'll explain it to you what Fiesta it is and what engine when we get there. But anyway, I just thought I'd start this video by stopping here and taking in this beautiful scenery. Because I like to do that. I'm one of these people, I like to go for long walks. I like to go into woodlands and, you know, just anywhere out in nature. It's just fantastic. Anyway, I suppose I better get to work. I'm probably late already. Not that anybody would notice. So anyway, let's ship out. Water in these hanging baskets is part of my job description now. If these flowers die, I'll get fired.
Nice to see you do the job properly.
Good morning, Money. Miss M, you know I almost took you for a flower. Whoops.
Alan, where there's an action, there's a reaction. Remember.
Woohoo! You know, I like it out here in this little shed. It's flipping out of the way. No one will know you're in here. You can disappear for the entire day and nobody will notice you've gone. No distractions. The problem is, in these 30-degree temperatures, this whole little shed thing is like tin, with a tin roof. And it's like it's like a flipping oven in here. As soon as you start exerting yourself, even slightly, the sweat starts pouring off. Anyway, let's get on with this blooming engine. Oh, this is a job I done last week. One moment. I'm going to need a constant supply of water. Last week I had a woman come in. This is a 2012 Ford Fiesta 1.25 litre. She'd been to a garage about a year ago. This is the story. About a year ago she went to a different garage because she was losing coolant. They diagnosed it as the head gasket was slightly gone and the water was going through the head gasket, through the cylinder and out the exhaust. She's been losing water for the past year and what her idea was to carry like a gallon of water around with her, and wherever she went she kept topping it up till it got to the point where she literally broke down. And she brought a car, well, she happened to break down near here. So she pulled her car in here and we gave her a gallon of water because she had no water and she wanted to get going basically. So off she went. Half an hour later, she was back on a recovery truck. She had completely broke down. The head gasket had completely let go. I lifted the bonnet, poured about 2 gallons of water in the bloody coolant expansion tank, started the car up, and you know when the head gasket's that badly gone, the water literally comes out of the expansion bottle like a flipping fountain. It was that bad. I said to her, listen, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not even going to bother taking your cylinder head off or trying to do a head gasket because chances are the head would be badly warped. More to the point, on one of these engines, the head's probably cracked. So I said, you either have a new engine or scrap the bloody car or get rid of it. That's what I told her. She decided to have a new engine. We got an engine like almost brand new, like 38,000 miles, and it actually looked, from a scrapyard, it actually looked brand new, this engine. I thought, wow, for a good price it was as well. So we fitted the engine in the car and she's gone. Done. But I'm left with her old engine. So I thought, there's a Cambelt on this, which I know people have done this on YouTube before, but when I've got some spare time, it gives me something to do, to piss around in the camera and show things like this. So I'm going to do my version of replacing this Cambelt. So, let's go. Right then. Now first of all, most of these Zetec engines, they have a stretch alternator belt on them, which means there's no tensioner. You've got to stretch the belt onto the pulleys. What I'll probably do is, when I've put this all back together, I'll put the belt on and show you how I do it. But this belt's already off, obviously. Normally, if you're going to replace the belt, you don't have to try and turn the pulleys to get the belt off. You can just cut the belt off. It makes it a lot easier. But the first thing, we're going to remove this water pump pulley, because this actually needs to come off, otherwise you can't get this central cover off. Before I go on too far, if this engine were in the car, you'd have to put a stand underneath the engine or support the engine somehow. Then you have to remove this engine mount. That will give you access to all this. It's not actually that bad to do. But anyway, yeah, I'll get this pulley out of the way. I would normally, you can't, obviously in the car you can't use an air gun. I would normally have the belt still on. That would make it easier to crack these open with like a 10mm ring spanner. You could even put a bar like through here, and then crack them undone one at a time and use the other bolts to hold the bar so you can't turn the pulley. Anyway, let's get these out. There. The alternator is bolted on to the engine mount, which is bolted to the engine. So you have to remove these two bolts. So, well actually you've got one bolt and a 15mm nut. Now this stud here we're going to have to take out as well. But the bottom bolt, I just loosen it. You don't have to take the bottom one out, you just have to loosen it a little bit. Just so it's all nice and floppy. On the end of the stud, you've got like an E8 bit, which was a little bit tight. So you have to take the stud right out, because we've got to take this engine mount off, engine bracket completely off. There. We just let that alternator hang down like that. So from what I can see, there's about 7-8mm bolts holding this cam cover on. I don't actually know why they need so many flipping bolts to hold this cover on. It just seems a little bit unnecessary. This is number 7. And round the back here, there's like a strip of rubber, which seems to, you just pull it off. Ooh, it's loose! That doesn't actually want to come off. What's holding it? There's another 8mm holding that rubber strip, and the rubber strip goes into the lower bit of the casing. So I'll take that stud out. There. Oh dear. That should just lift straight off now. Well, hey. There are 3 13mm bolts holding this engine bracket on. You'd normally use like a ratchet or a spanner to get to this bolt down here beside the alternator. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the alternator off, seeing as I'm in a position to take it off and the wires are disconnected from it anyway. Then I can whack it off with an air gun, it'll be a lot easier. So I'll get that out of the way. So I'll just whack these 3 13mm bolts out. There. Now we're going to have to tighten this engine up. Down the back of the engine, by where the drive shaft would sit, there's like a 10mm bolt. It's easier if you've got a long 10mm spanner. Crack that undone, and you can take that bolt right out of the block. At this point, you'd remove your high tension leads, and there's like a breather hose here. Then you've got a whole bunch of 8mm bolts holding your rocker cover down to the cylinder head. You'll notice that all these bolts, when you've undone them, they stay captive in the rocker cover, so you haven't got to take them out, which is good. So I'm going to get all these bolts taken out. And there's the last one. You may have to prise this a little bit. Oh, no, this one's actually come off okay, but sometimes they get a little bit stuck down. So that will lift off. I just want to point out here, the rubber gasket, I would strongly advise replacing this now, because these gaskets, they get very brittle and they get like squashed down. So after a while of being heated up so many times, they do start to leak, especially down the back of the engine. Okay, 18mm socket on your crankshaft pulley bolt, and you want to turn the actual pulley clockwise. There's a pair of slots in the back of the camshafts, okay? Now they're off centre, so you can only get the camshafts round one particular way. And as we turn the crankshaft clockwise, we get a flat bar, our setting plate, which we'll put there until these line up. But what I would do is, just before they line up, stop and don't put the plate in just yet. Okay, you see this pin here? This is a special timing pin to lock the crankshaft on these particular engines. So you'll have to have the correct pin. Don't try using anything else, it's got to be a certain length. And what that will do is, that will screw into that hole at the back of the engine where we took the 10mm bolt out, and it will screw in flush, just finger tight. Then continue to turn the crankshaft clockwise until it stops and it goes butted up hard, and that's butted up against that timing pin now. If our valve timing was correct to start with, this setting bar should slot perfectly into both of these slots. This one here, the inlet camshaft, it doesn't seem to want to, it's not quite lined up. It's gone in, but it's not that good a fit. I can see it's off a little bit. It'll go into one, but it won't quite go into the other one perfectly. But it's not bad, it's only a fraction out. But that's good enough for the minute. Now, because our crankshaft is butted up against our timing pin, if we were turning it clockwise, we can turn it anti-clockwise and it will move and it won't damage the pin or nothing. So what we can do now, we're butted up against our timing pin. I'm now going to whack this crankshaft pulley bolt out just with an air gun. Because they are pretty tight. There. These pulleys, in a lot of cases, they can actually stick onto the crankshaft really tight. And sometimes you have to actually fit a puller with claws around here and actually try and pull them off because they can be really tight. Sometimes spraying a little bit of freon oil in the middle sometimes helps, but I'm just saying these pulleys do get stuck quite badly in some cases. This one is absolutely perfect. It's spinning, it's lovely and free. So I'm lucky here. That's coming off, no problem. There. We now have one 8mm bolt holding this lower cover on, which is literally falling off. That's it. Now this particular tensioner, they're just like free adjusting. So as I just turn that, it'll adjust the belt. So I can pretty much pull that up like so. Line the two holes up and put a pin through. Tighten that a bit more. So I can pin it like that, and that's in our loosened state. Now we can just remove the belt, and that belt will just come off so easily. To remove this tensioner, it's just a 13mm bolt. You just loosen it, spin the bolt out, and we're done. You'll notice there's a little square here in the back of the water pump, and that little notch bit there on the tensioner, that's what's actually going to fit into our square in here when we relocate it. It'd probably be best at this point replacing the water pump. There's about there's about 6 8mm bolts holding the water pump on. I should think after like 100, 125,000 miles, it's probably worth replacing this anyway. I'm not going to on this engine obviously because it's a scrap engine, but yeah, this is the time you actually want to do it. I'm going to loosen the camshaft sprockets now so we can align the new belt up, well refit the old belt in this case. But on the camshafts there's like a spanner size, 22mm spanner size, so you can hold a spanner while we undo the sprockets. So I'll put my 13mm socket on my exhaust camshaft sprocket bolt. I'll hold the spanner and I'll crack that undone. There. That should spin because there's no keyway here. And just so you, well actually I was going to take the pulley off, but I don't think I really need to, but I'll take it off anyway so you can see. But there's no keyway there. So this sprocket, the only thing holding this tight onto the camshaft is the bolt when it's tightened up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave that like just finger tight. And I'll do the same with our inlet camshaft. There, and that's spinning. So now all I have to do is with the spanner on my camshafts, I can just turn each camshaft until the actual setting bar slots in. So that one's in, and then the inlet one there. That's our setting bar fitted in there lovely now. Excellent. I'll just say this again. On our tensioner pulley, there's a little square here. That's going to fit into the square in our water pump. Just there. That's our locator. So that will go there. Our bolt will go in. And what I tend to do is, although it doesn't matter, you can tighten this up now if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave that finger tight at the minute. Our crankshaft sprocket, okay, that our timing belt sits on, that should be spinning absolutely freely on the crankshaft like that. It shouldn't be seized up, because believe me, these actually can seize on and you have to free them off, but this one's fine, that's spinning as it should be. There are no arrows on this timing belt, but I normally fit them with like the writing on the belt like facing towards me. So that belt will just slot on, no problem at all. Because everything's spinning, you can't really get it wrong. And that will just fit in all the pulleys. It's a bit fiddly, but there. We're on, make sure it's all levelled up perfectly. That's good. Now at this point you can just pull the pin out of our tensioner. Boom, and that will tension our belt. You can also now just tighten the tensioner up. 13mm. Right, at this point, if you stick your bottom pulley back on and just put the bolt in lightly, you can literally turn the actual pulley because it will kind of lock on, and you can turn it. You see the belt. You see I've nipped that just slightly. You see the belt moving, so I can now turn that until it's actually locked solid against our timing pin. You'll feel it butt up against the timing pin like that. That's where we want to be. Then just unnip your bolt and you can take your pulley back off. It's just to make sure that we definitely know that the crankshaft is butted up against the actual timing pin. You could, if you had a pair of pliers or something, put something soft around here and just turn this end of the crankshaft very gently, but make sure you don't damage it with anything. As long as you can turn this somehow, make sure it's against that timing pin. Now, putting our spanner back on our camshafts, we can tighten up our camshaft sprockets. I just do them pretty damn tight with the bar. If I find the torque wrench settings for these, I'll leave them in the description, or I'll put them on the screen. But that's all I would do. I would just tighten these up with a 3/4 bar, nice and tight. There, that's it. Right-o, fit your lower timing cover. I tell you, I'm trying to get on because I'm actually dripping with sweat. Pop the crankshaft pulley back on. You're probably best, if you buy a kit, you'll probably get a new crankshaft bolt anyway, so you want to replace that if you can. Put the bolt in there. Right, because I'm going to tighten this bolt up now, and I've got a timing pin in, I don't want the sort of like the force to be bending the pin as I tighten the bolt up. So I'm just going to nip this up just quickly, like that. I'm now going to remove the timing pin so we don't damage it. And I'm going to whack this pulley up nice and tight now. And that's all I do. I'll just whack that pulley bolt up, that crankshaft pulley bolt up, nice and tight with a good air gun. If you want to go down the route of torquing that bolt up, I'll see if I can find the torque wrench settings, but you'll have to probably take the starter motor out and lock the flywheel. It's a lot of messing around. When if you've got a good battery operated gun or an air gun, just whacking it up nice and tight, that won't come undone again. Our camshaft setting bar, we can now tap that out. The object now is to put your 18mm socket back on the crankshaft pulley bolt, and you want to spin the engine over 2 revolutions. So it'll be 2 revolutions of this crankshaft pulley. And as you're actually spinning it over, you'll be able to actually watch the belt and even feel the belt to see how tensioned it is. In the old days, what we used to do is on the longest length of the belt, if you couldn't turn it any more than 90 degrees, you knew you were good. And this one here, that's about 90 degrees and that feels tight now. So we know this belt's good. Although this is a used belt, I'm not going to put a new belt on this engine, but I'm just showing for example. But yeah, it's just a lot of tensioners, you'll have to sort of like tension them to a certain position, so you've got like a pointer in between, like a gap or something. But this one's a fully floating tensioner. It's tensioning all the time. I guess that's how they get such a long mileage interval out of these. I mean, I think these are something like 125,000 miles, which is not bad going for a rubber belt. Anyway, I'll keep turning this over. And obviously just before these slots line up flush or level with the cylinder head, just stop, a bit short. And then continue to turn this crankshaft clockwise until it goes solid. There, we're butted up solid now. Now if I've got this all correct, this setting bar should fit in both these slots. It's actually gone into our inlet camshaft perfectly. Sometimes you have to give them a slight tap. There, that's actually gone in. That is as good as you're going to get it. You could mess around all day. So sometimes you can be a tiny fraction out, it's really not going to matter. But if you're a considerable amount out, the engine's not going to run right. But if you can slide this bar into both these camshafts after spinning this engine over 2 revolutions, and you can fit it in like that, that will run lovely. That timing is as good as. I'll knock this bar back out now, because we know our timing is good. And I'll remove our crankshaft pin, and don't forget to refit the little 10mm bolt. It's got a little washer on it as well to stop the oil leaking. There, nip that down. Done. And that's it. One timing belt fitted. As you probably can see, these have got to be one of the easiest timing belts you can actually fit. They're a little bit worrying where you've got no keyway on the crankshaft sprocket, but with that timing pin in the back of the block, I mean really, you can't really go wrong. Anyway, what I'm going to do I'm going to put the cover back on and the top cover back on maybe, put the alternator back on, put the aircon pump back on, and I'll show you how I put the stretchy auxiliary belt on. They're always fun. So don't forget to fit a new rocker cover gasket. They're a rubber gasket. They leak. Take my word for it. Change it. There, you'll bolt that back down. Okay. Slap the old engine bracket back on. If I can line the bolts up. Obviously don't tighten nothing up until you've got all the bolts in finger tight. But to save time, I'll just whip them up with the air gun. There. I'm just going to bolt this air conditioning pump back on, because without it I'm not going to be able to fit the auxiliary belt, which is pretty obvious. So I'll get them started. This was the pump that come with the new engine, which is actually a newer design pump to what was on the other engine. The other engine had a different type of clutch unit on the end, different wiring as well, different hose connections, so it had never worked. So I had to swap these pumps over. I shall pop this alternator back on. I'll just point out here, the 2012 Fiesta that I changed the engine in, the new engine I got was out of a 2014 model Fiesta. It had identical wiring loom on it, well, looked identical, but when I looked at the block connectors, they were different coloured wires. So there are obviously some differences. So it's debatable whether it have actually worked or not. I'm just trying to hurry this along a little bit. I'll actually get them there. I'm not going to actually bother putting the cover on because it makes no odds really. This water pump pulley, assuming the cover would go back on first, obviously, then you would put the water pump pulley on after the cover's fitted. I'll just point that out because this pulley gets in the way of the cover, so the cover's got to go on first. When you get these bolts on, when this is in the car, it's not really that bad a job. You obviously have to work down here with like spanners and stuff because there's not that much room, but it's not desperately difficult, if you know what I mean. It's not that bad. There's enough room to do most things quite easily. But just to point out, if you're in the car and you wanted to tighten these bolts up, you can put like a long bar like that between two of the bolt heads, hold the bar and then tighten up the bolts like that. And get that on. There. Right, these stretch belts, I do not like them. They annoy me to hell. But anyway, I'll put it on the alternator, air conditioning compressor, put it on the water pump as far in as possible, and then put it on the bottom edge of your crankshaft pulley. Some people have got an applicator to fit onto the pulley so they can guide the belt on. If you don't have that, I'll just shove like a pry bar or a screwdriver in there like that. Put your socket on. It's easier with two people because you want somebody to hold this belt here on the water pump side, otherwise it's going to work its way off. If I start turning, you can kind of guide the belt on, see that's going on. If you can hold enough, yeah, it's going. You just got to watch it doesn't come off the water pump pulley. There. When you get it on so far, it might stay on. I'll keep going. Sometimes you have to work it a little bit. Yeah, now it's coming off the alternator pulley. I'm going to go back a bit. Or actually, I'll carry on going forward. I'll keep on going. I think that's as far as it's going to go. It's going to come off this one. So I'm going to work it backwards and that will bring it back onto our alternator pulley a bit. They're a pain, they're an absolute pain. Now I'll come forward again. So it's totally on the crankshaft sprocket. Yeah, it's all going on now, as it should do. You might find it will go on and it will stay on and it'll be one ridge out or something like that. So you just have to get a pry bar and move it over a little bit. There, that's that. There, that's on. But yeah, if you've got two people, because when you're in the car it's quite difficult. If you've got two people, you can use one person with a lever bar holding this pushed over so it doesn't come off the pulley while the other person's widening it on from the bottom. Yeah, I'm not a fan of stretch belts, but hey, you've got to do what you've got to do to get them back on. Oh, I'm telling you, the flipping sweat is running down me. It's because I'm in this building. Oh. Anyway, that's how I do a Cambelt on one of these. I will say, I don't actually want to say this, but I'm going to say it. A lot of the time, these cars will come in, you'll put the pin and lock the crankshaft, okay? And you'll just paint mark these to the back cover, and you won't even take the cover off. And you'll just take the belt off. As long as the crankshaft's pinned up, you know you're pretty much okay. If you've got these paint marked, as long as the belt goes back on in exactly the same place and there's not too much slap, you don't have to take the cover off. But you're not going to know exactly whether it's completely right or not, because the camshafts can always be out a bit. That's why, you know, to be fair, it is best to actually do it properly. For the little bit of extra work it takes just to take that rocker cover off, it's worth doing. At least it's peace of mind, because later on, if you don't do that, and you get like engine running problems because the cam timing's out, then you're going into like having to take it off anyway just to recheck it all, and it becomes a pain. You might as well have done it in the first place. So yeah, I would say don't take the cover off and do it properly. It's at least you'll know first time that it's going to be right. Anyway guys, that's it. Done. I'm going to go and take a shower. So till the next time. See ya.
Right. Did I hear you say shower?
Money! Wait! Just so we get the wet t-shirt.